speaker today. Peter D'Arienzo is the CEO of John Ball Zoo, and I had a chance to sneak a peek at his background and get an idea of what he has done, attending school at University of Miami, which is the wrong Miami. Miami University is the correct one, and he apparently decided that and ended up going to Rockhurst a little bit later in his career. But what I found in a few minutes talking with him, he is an exceptional person, and his experiences, his path to get to Grand Rapids, we're fortunate to have him here. His wife and his 3 kids. He has 3 children. I love the cello. He's got musicians. His son's playing cello. He's headed off to Princeton next year at the age of 16. I noticed that Peter, somewhere back, you may not even know this, but back on some of your bio stuff, I think he was like 3.95 out of a 4-point scale. So I'm like, wow, Peter's pretty smart. Apparently it's in the genes. Kids are doing very well and playing music. Happy to have you in Grand Rapids. He's been here for a little over a year now. And I work with Christine, and she's involved with the zoo, and was very excited to be able to come and listen to Peter as well. So please feel welcome at Rotary. Come on up and let us learn a little bit more about the zoo. Welcome.
Thank you for that warm welcome. So I guess there's not a whole lot to say about me. A little over a year ago, my wife of 23 years and 3 kids moved to Grand Rapids. And when I first saw the opportunity, candidly, I didn't know a whole lot about Grand Rapids, but I do. My mom's side of the family lives on the east side of the state, and I was trying to get closer to family. But I did some research, and I love it here. Couldn't be happier. I love the connection to the outdoors, nature, strong family values, strong school systems, the cultural arts. My first time out here was during Art Prize. And I remember during the interview I asked, wow, this is amazing, all this stuff, all this art out here on the streets, and I was told it's like that every week. So. But it was a lot of fun. And I always did ask about my background. I spent over 20 years with AMC Theaters, and I did many things at AMC, from finance, mergers and acquisitions, HR, operations. But it really helped prepare me to run a business. But it felt kind of, I had a good time, but it felt kind of empty. So after I left AMC, I wanted to follow my passion and get more involved with environmental management. So I went into manufacturing, and which was interesting. And I was responsible for human resources, environmental, and safety. And there I became a certified LEED ISO 14000 auditor, which is environmental management systems, and incredibly rewarding. But I miss serving the public, and I miss being part of a community. So when the opportunity for the Kansas City Zoo came along, I jumped at it. And had a great time there, learned a lot. But when the Grand Rapids opportunity came along, I jumped at it. So here I am. Today, I'd like to talk about John Ball the person and John Ball Zoo of yesterday, today, and where we're going tomorrow. John Ball, born in 1794 in New Hampshire, later graduated from Dartmouth in 1820. He played many roles: the naturalist, the educator, and the community builder. The naturalist, which I prefer to call the conservationalist, as you'll see why later. But in 1832, he traveled to Oregon County along the Oregon Trail as part of the 3rd Expedition West. He traveled with a pencil, compass, thermometer, tape measure, and a sextant. He documented and contributed to understanding of nature, and he's credited with writing the first geology of the Oregon area. He later traveled to San Francisco and joined a whaling ship and went to Tahiti, Hawaii, sailed around South America, landed in Rio. And from Rio, he continued to document his natural world, but he wanted to get back to the States. And he took a position on the USS Boxer, commanded by Lieutenant Farragut, to get back to the US. This is the same Lieutenant Farragut that is famous for, which I can't repeat the word, but something the torpedoes full speed ahead. So by 1837, he made it to Grand Rapids. John Ball, the educator, he has a long history in education. His first role was in 1822 in Georgia, then 1832 as the first Western teacher in Oregon. And as a matter of fact, if you go to Oregon, there's a city there that has a statue of John Ball commemorating that. In Grand Rapids, he built the first schoolhouse and served over 30 years on the early Grand Rapids School Board. Long history in education. John Ball, the community builder. In August of 1836, John Ball arrived in Detroit, Michigan as a land investor and speculator, heard about all the excitement in West Michigan, and immediately went west. He arrived in Grand Rapids, and he developed a reputation of integrity. Most settlers that arrived to West Michigan were cash poor, as you can imagine, and while other land speculators charged 100% interest on a 2-year note for land, in contrast, John Ball took a longer time horizon, many times providing 100% financing. He even completed the paperwork, purchased warrants, and advanced funds. John Ball did this as he saw this as a way to build a healthy community. To quote John Ball, "It does me good to go over those then forest lands, along well-made roads, lined with fine white houses, rich orchards, and fruitful fields. 9 out of 10 those have seceded, showing that cheap lands and industry are the surest road to competence, especially for young men and those of limited means. This to me is better pay than the little fees they gave me for those services." So John Ball became known as Honest John Ball. John Ball was a community builder, and John Ball made his first donation of 40 acres to what would later become the John Ball Park and Zoo to the city of Grand Rapids. So now I'd like to talk a little bit about John Ball Zoo of yesterday. So we're 126 years old this year, but last year we celebrated our 125-year anniversary. And when John Ball died in 1884, he left us 40 acres. This is the early park, and as you can see, it very popular. Matter of fact, when the park would open for the season, it became such a big event that everybody from Grand Rapids had to be out there, that the factories closed down at lunch so that people could join in the festivities. Great community gathering place. The first animals were added in 1891, mostly deer, moose, hoofstock. And then old Jack the Bear was the first carnivore added in 1893. So I've been here a little over a year, and I hear that Grand Rapids is Beer City. I had no idea that it started in 1893. That bear is famous that people would come to the zoo and they would bring 2 pints, a pint for themselves and a pint for the beer. Now, so that bear had a lot of beer. And I'll talk about what it means to be an AZA accredited zoo later, but that is not the best. That is not an actual diet for bears, and it's not the best, but they didn't know that back then. So he was pretty popular. The Central Plaza of the zoo formed in 1905, which is where the current otter exhibit is. This iconic statue of John Ball was installed in 1925. So last year when we celebrated the 125 years, we had people sending photos, multi-generational photos of being a child and having a photo taken in front of the statue. So this is really an important part of the fabric of John Ball Zoo. 1949, the first zoo director was hired. Before that, it was managed by the park director. Also, the John Ball Zoo Society was formed to raise funds for the zoo. 1950 saw the first exhibit, which is Monkey Island. Then in 53, the Children's Zoo, and then through the 50s and 60s, we saw an explosion of growth. Over 20 exhibits were built, one of the largest being the prestigious polar bear exhibit. This exhibit now is where our western brown bear is and our grizzly bear. We actually removed this to create more space. In the 1970s is when the zoo went into education and the zoo school was formed. Matter of fact, this gentleman here, first teacher, he still teaches at the zoo school. It's pretty impressive. We also hired our first education curator, and our docent program was formed. A new master plan was built in the 80s. which prepared the zoo for another explosion of growth. And you can see the iconic red barn right here. From 80 to 85, a new children's zoo was built, Children's Adventure World. We added the mountain lion, the snow leopard. Matter of fact, the snow leopard we have right now is 18 years old. The otter exhibit, prairie dog, coyote, eagle, indoor monkey habitat, South American exhibit. Then we had a period of uncertainty, and from 86 to 90, there was discussion going back and forth, and the zoo eventually became a county zoo versus a city zoo. Once that was settled, we had more growth, and we had the Living Shores Aquarium, new plaza and restaurant built in the mid to late 90s. The renovation of the Hilltop Picnic Pavilion and a new road going up to it was built, and that was reopened in the late 90s. We added chimpanzees in 2001. The Bissell lions were added in 2008. The Bissell Treehouse and the new gift shop all happened around 2010 to 2012, including the Idema funicular, which is a lot of fun, and I'm hoping many of you have seen the treehouse. It's a stunning piece of architecture. The treetop play area was added in 2013, and that grizzly bear exhibit that I talked about that used to be the polar bear exhibit was renovated. Then we added tigers in 2014 and 2015. This is actually one of the best tiger exhibits in the United States because it gives the tigers choice. There's an upper and lower habitat, and the tigers have the option of deciding whether they want to go down below or stay up above. Okay, so the next 25 years, 125 years. So a little bit about the zoo today. So I'm going to apologize in advance because I'm going to share a lot of facts and figures. And I do this to try to give an idea of the size and scope of the nonprofit. We've been a nonprofit for 3 years, meaning we've separated from the county and we formed our own organization and we lease the park and the zoo from the county. We have more than 100 acres, and 31 acres is the current developed zoo. If you're facing the zoo, the 31 developed acres is on the right, the undeveloped side is on the left, and then we have about 35 acres of parkland. That area will stay parkland, so we're focused on developing more of the current 31 and moving over to the left. We are the 10th oldest zoo in the United States at 126 years. We're the 4th most attended cultural attraction in the state of Michigan, with attendance from all 83 counties. More than half of our attendance comes from outside of Kent County. Each year, we serve over 500,000 guests and over 200,000 people to our park. Our educational programs serve over 40,000 students. We have over 200 paid team members and almost 200 active volunteers. And according to a GVSU study, our economic impact is almost $40 million per year, with over $20 million coming to Kent County for the sole purpose of the zoo. And here's an interesting fact, and I love quoting this because it usually surprises people. More people in the US go to zoos every year than the combined attendance of professional football, baseball, basketball, and hockey.
No way.
Yeah, I left out college football. So, what's AZA? I talked a little bit about AZA before, but what really makes us different from other zoos, we're one of the oldest continuous AZA-accredited zoo in the US at over 30 years. We're actually the oldest zoo in the state of Michigan that's had continuous AZA accreditation. AZA stands for the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. There is more than one accrediting body out there, but the AZA has the highest standards in the industry and is the most difficult standard to achieve. And what makes an AZA institution different is they're focused on conservation and animal welfare, particularly the psychological needs of the animals. Zoos of the past had animals all lined up in concrete bunkers. Unfortunately, some zoos still do that, but we're not one of those zoos, nor would you find an AZA zoo that does that. We are focused on research and saving animals from extinction. As a matter of fact, we do not even own the animals. It goes against our core values, right? As with all AZA zoos. AZA requires more than just providing food and shelter like the zoos of before. We provide top medical care and address the emotional and psychological needs of the animal. For example, our animals can self-select to be off exhibit. So that can make it challenging because people come to the zoo to see animals. So we try to find ways where the animal wants to be out front, but if they're tired of being viewed, they choose to self-select to be off. Certain species have a tendency to do that more than others. For example, wolves don't like to be viewed. Lions tend not to want to be viewed. And some primates, not chimpanzees though. So, I know we're in the news recently, but, and that chimpanzee has been seeing a psychologist for quite a while. And I joke around, but he really is under the care of an animal psychologist. And the challenge, that chimpanzee joined our zoo from another zoo, and they got too comfortable being around people. So he's looking for attention from people, and we don't want them to bond with people, we want them to bond with the troop. So, we provide mental enrichment that encourages choice, that mimics wild behavior. We also allow animals to choose their mates, which can be problematic when trying to save an animal from extinction. And our team works really hard. We'll dim the lights, we'll play some Barry Manilow music, but sometimes it just doesn't work out. So then we trade with another zoo, try to find a good match. So we also build habitats, not cages. And it's the dream of every AZA zoo to reintroduce animals back into the wild through research, science, and breeding programs. Matter of fact, did you know that all of our keepers have college degrees in the life sciences? If you want to be a keeper at an AZA institution, you have to have a 4-year degree in biology, zoology, wildlife conservation, or one of the life sciences. We care for over 1,300 animals, and we have over 200 species. We participate, and this is what makes us different, 34 species survival plans, 39 scientific taxon advisory groups. Our mountain bondo, which is critically endangered with only a few hundred left in the wild, and at our current pace, the mountain bondo would go extinct in less than 10 years. So it's critical that we preserve that genetic diversity and have breeding programs in order to make sure we have enough richness in the genetic pool to reintroduce these animals back into the wild if they go extinct. Good news is we just had a baby bondo last year. We have 3 emerged tigers. There are less than 150 emerged tigers in the wild. We work tirelessly to ensure there's enough genetic diversity to also make sure that those tigers can continue. We also participate in several in situ Michigan conservation projects right here in our home state. The Great Lakes Piper Plover, the Kirtland's Warbler, Michigan wood turtles, and more. We are working tirelessly to ensure these animals do not go extinct. So, I've hit you with a lot of facts, but does that really tell you who we are or where we're going? What is the John Ball Zoo of tomorrow? What is a zoo? I talked about community, I talked about animals, I talked about educational programs. So it's not the animals, it's not the park. It's really all about the people. It's the community we serve through the story of our park and our conservation of animals. You can see this every day at the zoo. You'll find 3 generations of a family walking around together, actually talking to each other. Consider this, according to an AZA survey, the most memorable zoo experience isn't an animal, it's a person. It's spending time with mom or grandparents or simply each other. This is so important in today's increasingly digital age. It's about connecting people to each other and all members of our community to each other through the conservation story. Remember John Ball that I talked about earlier, the naturalist, the educator, the community builder? We'd like to get back to our roots as we go forward into tomorrow. To his roots, to Grand Rapids' roots. We re-looked at our vision, mission, and values, all of us, the entire team, from the front line all the way up. And we made some dramatic changes a few months ago. We now have 4 core values: conservation, education, community, and celebrate. We developed 6 behavioral values: customer focus, excellence, integrity, communication, teamwork, and fun. After all, we are a zoo, so we gotta have fun. We added community to our mission statement, and we weave diversity and inclusion throughout our values and our strategic plans. So I wish I had a master plan to share, but I thought it was critical that we really look at who we are, where we're going, develop new values to guide us as guiding principles before we really start building. So we do have a master plan on the website, but candidly it's changing. We're going through the process of our master plan right now. Many of those elements will change, but we wanted to put the brakes on because we wanted to involve the community to understand how to better serve the community. How do they want to use the park? What are they expecting out of the zoo? I can say we're working on a new front entryway and a lower valley. This will bring new animals, but it will also add switchback paths like we did last year. Coupled with the upper valley trail, it will make the entire zoo ADA and stroller friendly, providing better access for our community. We're also doing a few new things this year while we're going through the master planning process. This Memorial Day, we'll be adding a new outdoor bird show where birds will fly overhead. Also this month, we're adding a new outdoor space for our sandcats. Early fall, we'll be adding red pandas, and that seems to be generating a lot of excitement. If you haven't been to the zoo in a while, last year we brought lemurs and howler monkeys. Howler monkeys are the largest species of primates in the New World into new outdoor spaces. And we actually had a howler monkey birth just a few months ago. We also added a new gently sloped boardwalk from the bottom of the waterfall to the top of the hill. Thanks to our community, we're growing, we're expanding our team, our volunteers, and even board members. Most of all, we're looking to serve our community inside of our zoo, and this part's critical, and outside of our zoo in the community. Thank you, and if you have any questions, I'd love to entertain them. I love questions because I don't really like to do all the talking, you know?
So what are some of the, challenges new to you? I mean, what are you finding most challenging? Because you obviously weren't managing a zoo before you came here. So what is the most challenging thing for you in this new job?
I would say, when I worked with AMC and I went around different markets, I usually went into a market and I had a robust business plan and systems, and it was finding the right people. What I've learned here is we have amazing people. We're 126 years old, so people expect robust systems, but it's really putting in that business rigor, putting in generally accepted accounting principles, putting in financial metrics, weekly reporting, monthly reporting, business plans, that kind of stuff. So I would say that's our biggest challenge, trying to build all that while also operate a zoo. Last year, a millage campaign, build the team to look at those numbers. And in my experience, and I hope this is okay to say, but nonprofits and for-profits, you really run them the same way. It's why you run them is different. So instead of creating earnings for the share or earnings per share, you're creating earnings for the mission. And having that rigor is critical. Thank you. Yes?
You said you don't own the animals. What are the organizations that do own these?
They're owned, and I shouldn't use the word own, but they're collectively shared amongst ATA. So with the different species survival plans, and we also do genetic mapping of the animals to try to find good matches. And then there's these committees that meet several times throughout the year, and they make decisions on where to move animals. And those decisions are based on the welfare of the animal. For example, as these standards have changed over the decades, a new zoo might build a new exhibit that can provide better welfare, or there may be a better genetic match. For example, our Amur tigers are a level 1 match, and that's measured 1 through 5. 1 is the best. If you can get a offspring from a level 1 match, you're going to do dramatic. It's going to be dramatic for the gene pool. Level 5 would be first relation family, so you don't want to do a level 4 or level 5. Unfortunately, we can't breed any feline over 35 pounds in the state of Michigan, so we're working on some legislation to change that. But we're really eager to get that changed though, because there's only 150 left in the wild.
What are your plans for the expansion of the 31 acres? What are some highlights?
Great question. So we're going to spend over the next several years probably around $50 million or so, from the pond all the way up to Monkey Island will be all new exhibits with a switchback trail. I don't know exactly which animals yet, because I wanted to feel for what people are looking for, or the amenities. If you were to ask me that question probably 6 months from now, I'd probably give you a better answer. We'll also be spending of that money about $10 million to renovate the existing structures. We literally have structures that are decades old. You may remember we had baboons, but the baboon exhibit, due to its age, it was not an ideal situation to keep baboons in from a welfare standard, and it didn't speak to our values. So we found that, and the baboons were reaching, they were about 30 years old, which is a long time for a baboon. And so we found an active living senior center for them, and they really have these things. So now the baboons are with 30 other baboons having a good time with a lot of space to roam. Yes.
If you get a new animal, like a new tiger or a new lion or a new monkey, where do you get them from? You don't go to Craigslist or anything like that. Where do you get animals?
Through so the question is that how do we get new animals? Because there's not like a website or a Craigslist. And the zoos work together. The AZA zoos work together, and even some non-AZA zoos will participate if they have a strong enough species survival plan, that when there's an offspring, we talk to each other and we find space for them. So there are some rules that we go by. So for example, if you send the female, then the firstborn usually the first choice goes back to the zoo that sent the female. The male gets the second, and then the third would be whichever zoo is housing the breeding program. Yes?
I feel terrible that I didn't know probably all of what you just shared. So I'm curious about marketing efforts. How do you continue to spread the word and so that next generations continue to be engaged and supportive of your mission?
Wow, that's a great question. So I think getting out and talking more and developing a new interpretive plan for the zoo so people understand that. But I will say that the zoo industry as a whole is struggling with how do they create an identity out in the public. If you haven't been to an AZA zoo, usually your perception is, why do you have animals in a zoo? Shouldn't they be out in the wild? Unfortunately, there's very few wild places. So you might go through Africa and you might see 200 acres, but if there's a 4-lane highway separating, and some species, they need 100 miles to roam, they've been cut in half. So there's actually very few wild places. And AZA zoos have a different mission than what we call roadside zoos. And there's only 5 AZA zoos in the state of Michigan, but there's dozens and dozens of places that have animals. So we got to do a better job of getting that word out, and I'm hoping through better on-site interpretive, but also getting out and speaking speaking to groups like you. Yes.
Now, when you work out a deal to get an animal, is there cash change hands or not?
No, there's not, because we don't own the animals. Let me back up. There's no cash exchange to acquire the animal, but sometimes there's cash involved. A zoo might say, if you want our tiger, you have to donate X amount of dollars to a conservation fund. And that money goes towards conserving that species.
One more question?
Yes.
The zoo school, can you tell us who that served and what the future of that looks like?
Oh, great question. So the zoo school is part of Grand Rapids Public Schools. It's 6th grade. There's 2 classrooms of 30 students each. I know that the GRPS has done some great work on changing how students come into that group. Last year we've made huge strides on a more diversified student body, and right now it's made a lot of changes to that. Part of our master plan includes a new conservation education center, which will be new classrooms for GRPS. It'll still be the same 2 classrooms, but it'll be dramatically upgraded facilities. And most of that, we're still working out the finances on that, but they've made a commitment to their bond that some of that money will go towards building that.
Peter, thank you so much. I know myself, I've got a lot of memories from the zoo when I was little growing up here, and it's just continued to get better and better. And so happy that you and your family have moved to Grand Rapids. We would like to give you as this certificate in honor of your time with us here. We are donating a clean water filter to a needy family in Nicaragua in your name. So thank you for coming and sharing with us. And I will also, just since you are here, and then since we also have a couple of other members, to make it simple, I'm just going to throw a membership application in here.
Okay, great.
So you're welcome to join us also. Thank you.
Great.
And if I can have Dawn take my camera. Hopefully there's enough memory in here.